Copas Women's Center at the University of Scranton. Who's been there? A couple hands. I'll take that. So we are located in the DeNaples Center, which you're currently in on the second floor, and offer gender equity programming for all men and women on the campus community, but also in the local area. And this would be one of the events that highlights that. So I'm joined with some colleagues of mine, and we sat together in May. So this has been a long time coming to discuss a need that we found maybe some students and community members needed. So who's written a letter to the editor? Okay. Has anyone thought about it? Okay. So we're going to go through to identify exactly what that is and what that is utilized for. So the Jane Copas Women's Center and several staff members work on social justice and advocacy and activism. And to me, this is a form of that. It really encapsulates the power of the word and the power of sharing your voice and sharing lived experiences. And so when we came together, we decided this would be a perfect example in how to highlight PWPA and how to get involved politically, get engaged in your community. And that power, to see that in your papers, in your media, is powerful, right? Who reads the news? Let's start there. Okay, what are some of the news sources? Just shout them out. Associated Press? Fox News? Times Tribune? Hint, hint, right? So local papers, that is a source to get your local news, but also engaging in the global and national level as well. And so we'll talk about that power to engage as citizens in the community, whether that be the local community or the global community. And so we have a couple people to help us do that tonight. I will be one of the people walking around, and we have Dr. Jean Harris from the Political Science Department at the University of Scranton, Dr. Kim Pavlik from Communication. Okay, I wanted to clarify that. And then Stephanie Longo from Pennsylvania Women's Press Association. So I think we'll begin. We'll hear a little bit about the history and the importance of engagement and writing a letter to the editor with Dr. Jean Harris, and then we'll actually learn how to do that.
Good evening. How many of you know that today is Constitution Day? That's why there's constitutions on your tables, not enough for everybody. Why is today Constitution Day? Anybody? Obviously it has something to do with the Constitution. On September 17th in 1787, the U.S. Constitution that's in effect today, so today's U.S. Constitution, was signed by 39 of the 55 men, and it was all men, who participated in the Constitutional Convention. Women at that point weren't encouraged or expected to participate in government. The Constitutional Convention was called to amend the first Constitution of the United States, which was the Articles of Confederation. However, instead of amending the Articles, the state delegates drafted a whole new Constitution, and Congress sent it to the states for ratification. So the goal was to get rid of the Articles of Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, and replace it with the Articles with the U.S. Constitution, sorry. The lack of a Bill of Rights, that is a list of constraints on the government, was one of the key criticisms of the proposed Constitution. Newspapers were one of the primary tools for educating citizens about the proposed Constitution. Newspapers were a key venue for citizens to debate and criticize the proposed constitutions. It quickly became evident by those who had written the document and who supported the new Constitution that they needed to let people know publicly that they would be willing to add a list of constraints on the government, add a Bill of Rights, very quickly after the ratification of the Constitution. And so the Bill of Rights was sent to the states and ratified in 1791 and added to the Constitution. The First Amendment in the Bill of Rights expresses freedoms that we all have. So the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, so there's your religious freedom, or Congress cannot abridge the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So U.S. citizens believed that freedom of expression, and so all of the things in the First Amendment talk to freedom of expression, that freedom of expression was an essential building block for a healthy, effective, and responsive representative democracy. However, in the newly created representative democracy, the majority of U.S. citizens did not have a lot of the same rights. Most citizens did not have the right to vote. Women and men of color who did not own property were not allowed to vote. Women also were not expected to speak in public, not by law, but by social norm. And if women were writing and wanted to publish, they couldn't use their names. They had to use a male name. So women were not free to use the same modes of expressing their concerns and views as were men. Times and legal rights have changed, but that does not mean that everything is equal, all voices are heard. Today, while a growing number of people, particularly young people, turn to social media to express themselves, by tradition, newspapers have been a form of media used by citizens to hold their governments accountable and to share their concerns and criticisms with neighbors and government officials, and to, as Abigail Johnson would say, foment rebellion, or at least, did I say Johnson? Abigail Adams, wow, that's bad. Abigail Adams, to foment rebellion, or at least foment calls for change in their communities. So writing to the newspaper is a way to participate in politics, get your community members knowledgeable about concerns, and also try to spur them to action. Letters to the editor are a voluntary form of political participation. Editorial pages of newspapers are a forum for exchanging information and opinion. There is some evidence that letters to the editor play an important role in our democratic system. Some politicians even seem to pay attention to the content of letters to the editor. However, as is true with most forms of political participation, not all citizens write letters to the editors, and not all groups of citizens are represented in the editorial pages. The majority of published letters to the editor are written by white men between the ages of 40 and 70. How many of you pay attention to the letters of the editor, the letters to the editor in the newspaper? I've been paying attention to the local paper the last few weeks, knowing that we were going to be here this evening, and pretty much every day, you're lucky to find one woman who's written a letter. Although 2 days ago, 3 out of the 4 letters were from women. So go figure. So that's a good thing. The majority of published letters, as I said, are written by white men between the ages of 40 and 70. Are young women and men of color not writing letters to the editor? Are the editors who determine the letters that are printed, editors who happen to be pretty much all white men, are they aware of this overrepresentation of white men among the letters that they do publish in their papers? Clearly, there's a long history of citizens using the print media to hold their governments accountable. A letter to the editor is a low cost, a stamp, or a no cost, online submission, way to participate in politics. Tonight, we hope to empower you to participate in politics and improve your communities through writing letters to the editors. So now I'd like to turn the program over to Stephanie Longo, who is with the Pennsylvania Women's Press Association and also the Abington Suburban. Stephanie.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the Pennsylvania Women's Press Association, first of all, I would like to welcome all of you here this evening, and I would also like to thank from the bottom of my heart the University of Scranton, especially the Women's Center, as well as Dr. Harris and Dr. Kim Pavlik for all of the work that they have done with getting this together for us this evening. This is the Northeast District of the Pennsylvania Women's Press Association's first big partnership with a college or a university, and we are so excited. Just to give you a little bit of background on the PWPA, I am the state vice president as well as Northeast Regional District Director. I've been associated with the association since about 2006, so I've been there for a really long time. And how it all happened was, one day I was working in a newsroom and my publisher basically did some sexual discrimination to me, making fun of me for being a woman. And it was a constant thing. It was all the time. And you would be like, hey, the guys are great, but Stephanie, you're doing a terrible job, even if I was doing a great job on something. And it finally got to the point where I couldn't stand it anymore, so I sat down and I did some internet research. Who can help me out with this because I can't stand this? I may leave journalism for good if I have to put up with this. I found this organization called the Pennsylvania Women's Press Association. I thought, maybe these people can just give me some advice as to what to do. Well, when you reach out to somebody in PWPA, they suck you in. You're stuck with them for life. And thank God that I have PWPA because they are just a fantastic organization. I have met some amazing female journalists from across the state that I have become friends with. Some of them I even consider my family. They are just a wonderful bunch of women who are all dedicated to furthering women's issues in journalism. We want to see women succeed. We want to see more female bylines in newspapers. And we want to see more women participating in the art of journalism. You don't have to be a woman to be a member of Pennsylvania Women's Press Association. Obviously, we love men. We want you to come and join us. But we just want you to have just an idea that all are equal. And in fact, that phrase that I just said, all are equal, is part of our 2014-2015 campaign. If you're live tweeting this, it's hashtag all are equal. And it's just to get people to realize that men and women in all walks of life are equal. And we're just trying to promote that through newsroom equality. So that's really what PWPA is all about. We are also unveiling in the Northeast District tonight our student memberships. So we would love to have all of you that would like to join us be a part of our organization. It's $10 for the year, and you get some really cool benefits because you get mentors like me or some of the other PWPA members that are here tonight. Actually, I'd like all of the members to raise their hands just so people know who the PWPA people are. Yep, they're all congregated right over there. And they're all some of the best journalists that I know, so you're in very good hands tonight. We do have a student scholarship that's available each year. This year, Katie Mert from Pennsylvania State University won it. And we're already so proud of her because she's at a college, I believe, in Philadelphia now, working full-time, and she's also their newspaper advisor. And she got our scholarship, she helped pay off some of her student loans, and now she's in the field helping students become journalists. And that's what we're all about. We're just about furthering our field, and every one of us in it is as passionate as you will believe. So that's a little bit about PWPA. Now I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of what we are all here for tonight, and that's writing a letter to the editor. And I thought I saw a show of hands about how many people have actually written one before. Yes? Okay, one person. This is good though. So you don't even need to take the workshop. You could just teach everybody else to walk to the tables. Awesome. Okay, well, I mean, if you want it. All right, I like that. All right, so writing a letter to the editor. This is one way, if you're interested in even attempting a career in journalism or even just attempting a career in writing, you would want to participate in this. Because even if you're not interested in journalism, no matter what career you do, you need to know how to write a little bit. I mean, at least be able to put a sentence together, right? Am I right here? Yeah. All right. So one good way to actually practice some of those writing skills before you get out into the real world is to write a letter to the editor. And I bet everybody in this room has something that he or she is passionate about, right? I'm just going to throw out some examples. Sports, politics, history, Penn State, anything like that, right? There's something out there that you're passionate about. Well, you can get a good topic for a letter to the editor just out of something that you're passionate about. I'll give you an example. My first letter to the editor. For those of you who know me very well, you know I'm a very passionate Italian American. Everything about Italian American history gets me really, really excited. So one day I was driving through Clark Summit, and I was actually a sophomore at the University of Scranton at the time. I have my BA and MA from the University of Scranton. And I saw this license plate on a car, like those fancy vanity plates that are in the front of the car that can be like a flag or anything. It was the Italian flag spray painted over with delete expletive, the Italian. I got really, really ticked off because you don't cross Italians around me. Like that's just, my last name's Longo, come on. You know, you understand that. So I wrote a letter to the editor. And I explained about anti-Italian discrimination. I explained about the WAP word. Yes, the WAP word to an Italian is the equivalent to name any other racial slur. And I explained all that. And a couple of weeks went by, I got a phone call. That phone call was from the Scranton Times-Tribune. And guess what? They ran my letter. And I just did it because I was ticked off. That was the reason why I did it. And they actually ran my letter. So I'm talking to you from experience. If you have something that you're passionate about, write about it. You don't know if that letter will end up in the newspaper. Like I said, I just did it to vent. I didn't think it would run, and it ran. So if you look at your handouts on the tables, you have a blue one and you have a yellow one. And the blue one is actually front and back. You're going to see a grid on the blue one. That grid on the blue one is going to give you just basic information on how to write a letter to the editor. And it's just in some basic points. You're going to start off with your title. So you want to have something eye-catching. You want to have something that just kind of grabs readers' attention. You don't want it to be, here's what I think about football. You want it to be something interesting. So definitely come up with something eye-catching and interesting for it. You don't necessarily need to have that because the editorial staff of whatever newspaper you're submitting it to will probably give it a different title. But hey, if you're working at submitting a letter to the editor, why not? Why not try to come up with a title? It's your chance to try to exercise your writing skills. Paragraph 1 is what's called the salutation and introduction. And that's basically your thesis statement. How many of you know exactly what a thesis statement is? Who wants to be daring and actually tell me what a thesis statement is? And I'm coming right to you so you could have the microphone.
Like a statement of your main theme or idea, basically.
Exactly. It's the statement of your main theme or idea. So your thesis statement is setting the tone for your letter. It's what's going to get your readers interested in what you're saying, and it's going to tell your readers what you're saying. Because obviously nobody wants to read a rambling letter, right? You want to read something that actually has a point. So that's what your thesis statement is. Paragraph number 2 is your supporting reason. So all of your reasons why your thesis statement is awesome go in this paragraph. Paragraph 3 are some more supporting reasons. Give some additional things, like maybe, I would say paragraph 2 would be your strong support, and paragraph 3 would be maybe like your slightly weaker support, like this is still very supportive, but not as strong as the stuff that you put in number 2. And then paragraph 4 is your conclusion or your recommendation. And this is just summarizing your point of view and then just making a recommendation for some future action. And let's face it, if you're ticked off like me when I wrote that letter to the editor a long time ago, mine was, why can't everybody just try to learn a little bit about everybody else instead of saying bad things about everybody else? Again, all are equal. So that would be a good way to close off a letter to the editor by just saying what you think and how that problem that you're talking about can be solved. And then your closing is just yours truly, sincerely. Of course, you want to be nice to the people because they're taking a risk by actually running your letter to the editor in the newspaper. On the flip side of the blue paper, what I did when we were planning this event tonight, I sent out an email to the Pennsylvania Women's Press Association's listserv, and I asked all of the journalists that are in it to give me some ideas on how to write a good letter to the editor. And this is just a compilation of everything that I received and then some. These are also some of my ideas on it. So the number one thing that I got from fellow journalists was check your newspaper for a policy. Every newspaper, more or less, has a policy on what they want to see in letters to the editor. Not every newspaper is going to have one, but most of them do. And because we're in the city of Scranton, I made sure that I put the Scranton Times-Tribune's policy in here. And it just asks that letters include the author's name and town of residence for publication, as well as daytime and home phone numbers for confirmation. They need this because they need to make sure that it's you that actually wrote the letter instead of somebody pretending to be you, because then that opens up a whole bunch of legal issues that you don't want to deal with. So just give them a phone number and call. Obviously, if you're taking the time to write the letter, you're going to say that it's you. So A letter will be most likely to be printed if the guidelines are followed. I've heard from journalists that have received some letters to the editor that the guidelines weren't followed, and they were filed under G for garbage. So make sure you follow the directions. The next one is brevity is key. And this is a big one. You need to make sure that your letters are about 300 words or less. And when considering letters for publication, top priority is given to shorter letters rather than longer ones. At one newspaper that I was at, I received a letter to the editor that was over 1,000 words long, and my eyes glazed over about maybe 500 words into it, and I could not figure out what their thesis was. So make sure that you be short, sweet, and to the point. And you'll get your point across much better if you're quick about it versus long and rambling. No line crossing is another big one. When writing a letter to the editor, just make sure that you don't make any unfounded accusations, because guess what? Publishers share in the defamation and damaged reputation lawsuits. So you have to make sure that if you're going to call someone out, you want to do it in a classy way versus a nasty way. So no profanity in your letters to the editor, please. Publishers do share in that liability, so you want to be careful. No newspaper is going to publish a letter that might run them the risk of getting sued. So keep that in mind. They also ask that the letters are not disrespectful in tone, so no name calling, no foul language. The next one is vendettas. They are off limits. Topics should be of general interest to your readers and not personal or family dirty laundry or axe grinding. If you have a problem with your cousin, if you have a problem with your parents, you better take that to the therapist and not to the newspaper. Just a word of caution there. You might want to write and criticize an elected official, but just don't go off on a tirade because the said elected official once did something to someone in your family. That's a big one too, especially in Northeast Pennsylvania politics. Yes, elected officials float around among us. They're human beings just like all of us. You might have a very logical beef with an elected official. You might have said hello to them on the street and they ignored you. Don't send that into the newspaper, they don't care. If you're going to complain about some of the issues that they're doing, say, elected official A said that they were going to pave this street and they never did, that's a valid complaint. So make sure that you understand the validity of complaints when you're sending a letter to the editor. And speak for yourself. Don't claim that the majority of people agree with you unless you have conducted a survey and have statistics to back it up. Always make sure that you back yourself up when you're writing a letter to the editor, because if somebody has a question about something that you said and there's nothing to back it up with, you're going to look like a raving lunatic, and you really don't want to do anything like that, because then it'll be one of those things where we're sitting there in the newsroom like, oh no, this person sent us a letter again, God help us all. You don't want that. If you use statistics or studies in your letter, make sure you cite your sources. Just like you would do here for a paper, cite your sources. And that works out for us too, because then we'll read it and we'll know that you're legitimate with what you're talking about. And finally, have fun, because this is your chance to participate in a civic activity and getting to make your voice heard on a topic that is important to you. And don't be afraid to show your passion for what you are writing about, because really that's what this is. You're just showing your passion about something to other people, and they're hopefully going to enjoy reading it just as much as you're going to enjoy writing it. So now I'm going to give it back to Justine to start off the workshop, and thank you very much.
Okay, with that being said, so we've kind of outlined some basic guidelines for you, and we want you to see how that actually feels when you write this. The yellow piece of paper was a good example and a bad example, and you can kind of follow along with that as well. So have you, while Stephanie was talking, been thinking about a topic you're interested in? A little bit? Can you shout one or two topics out? Maybe give us some ideas? Gentrification? In Scranton or like anywhere? Awesome. One more. Respect for the media. Okay, about the story and respect for and with and to, all of that good stuff. Okay, So why we've brought PWPA representatives and a couple faculty members is because we're going to have you actually practice it a little bit, including the title, having like a quick, good quality title, and then the intro and body thesis, all of that content. We're going to give you about 8 minutes, to be precise, to practice this. If you didn't bring a piece of paper, you can flip over the yellow paper. Okay. And I think it would be helpful maybe if you could talk with somebody you're sitting with. If you don't have an idea, please partner up. Talk about it as almost like this is a group project in a class. I think Stephanie gave us some good ideas of other topics if you are interested in them. You could even practice writing to the Aquinas, which is the University of Scranton paper, about professors' hours and the policy about having professors be available to you to meet, or whatever kind of, or as Dr. Harris mentioned, a new sexual harassment and sexual misconduct policy. Does anyone know about that policy? Jesse does. That would be a really good policy. Or Constitution Day programming. There is just a ton of events and interests that you can write about. So we're going to give you 8 minutes to actually practice that, and then I'm hoping we'll have some brave volunteers to share what they learned or what they liked about their letters to the editor, okay? Thank you.
So, how is the workshop going for all of you? How did you do with just trying to come up with some ideas for letters to the editor tonight? Would anybody maybe like to share what they've written with us? Or how about some general thoughts just on the whole process? Like, was it hard to come up with a topic? How about something interesting that you learned from some of the journalists that were going around the room? Especially some of my friends over there from the Aquinas. How about, did you learn anything interesting while people were going around the room? Come over with the microphone.
Well, I learned that getting to the point is very important. Like you mentioned, if you don't get to the point right away, either your eyes glaze over or you might not even read the rest.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really big one. And that's even just with anything that you're writing in general for any class here at the University of Scranton. If you don't get to the point quickly, people are going to get bored. So just keep that in mind even when you're just writing your term papers, because that'll save you a lot of headaches no matter what you're writing. How about something else? Anything else that maybe you discovered along the way tonight? Something new that you didn't think about? Maybe something that you didn't think about with the Constitution from what Dr. Harris was saying tonight and how it relates to participating in the media. No? You guys are shy. Well, then again, it's 8 o'clock at night. You probably had a really long day. How about student memberships? Are we going to get some students to join the PWPA? Yeah? All right. This is good. That's what we want to see. We want to have more members, and we want you all to be really active because you are our future. We were passing around some blue tickets. Did everybody fill out the blue tickets? And it's to win a lovely PWPA swag bag that has coffee, homemade candy, a t-shirt, and some other goodies in it. You want to draw it? Yeah, you guys pick the winner. Dr. Pavlik's going to pick the winner.
Shelby Farrell.
Over there? Yay. Congratulations, Shelby. The last thing that we'd like all of you to do tonight is fill out the evaluations that are on the table. And we're just going to pick them up at the end. We just want to get an idea of what your thoughts on the presentation were and how we can improve it to make it better for you. So please make sure that you do that tonight. And on behalf of everyone here, I'd just like to thank you all for coming. It was really a pleasure to meet you. Thank you.